Hello and welcome to Chocolate Talks with eMAM. My name is Chuck Bulow. I'm the VP of Business Development here at eMAM. And today we're going to be talking about our live option for eMAM and doing some live logging of streams to the cloud, and then of course also local recordings and so on at a facility. So we'll kind of go through all the different options here for logging live events and news or whatever type of event that you have live going, and allowing people to remotely edit that content and remotely log it as well. So we'll get started here, go through all the different slides. If you do have any questions, please go ahead and add those to the question section in the go to webinar section for questions and so on. And then we'll see if we can get those answered at the end. All right, so here we go. So what is live logging and editing within eMAM? So the idea here is that we have live baseband, that could be on-site broadcast center. We have a couple of clients that are already doing this now with multiple channels. Baseband coming in, encoders going and creating different types of codecs that you're wanting to store. You can also stream video to the cloud in real time, and then within the eMAM system, you're able to actually watch a preview, the video coming in, and then log that, but also edit that as well. So we'll kind of go through what the process is there. You use typically local encoders. Those could be, and we'll talk about some of the options there as well. So typically the local encoders, they'll take a signal in from cameras, from switchers, things like that. And then we've partnered with Drastic Technologies up in Toronto, Canada, and they have a product called NetX Server, and that is what produces for us a viewable stream video within the eMAM system, our eMAM director, which we'll see in a second, and be able to then log that and edit that within the director interface. Now on premise, everything is there. The encoders are there, the Drastic Technologies NetX Code server is there. It's producing a high quality, high bandwidth video content master file, as well as proxy. And then we'll talk about what it produces for us to preview within the eMAM system. Now you can also stream to the cloud. So there's several encoders that allow you to create a transport stream that lands in the cloud somewhere, a very specific location where it can stream, and then of course be a live stream out to any kind of site that people are watching live. But then also we take that using the Drastic Technologies server, transcoder that converts that live stream to what we call an R10. And that R10 file then is previewable within the eMAM director with the time code that's produced. So typically it's time of day that is given to us, and then we can actually see that within the director interface and then be able to edit that and log that as well. So as the stream is coming into the eMAM system, local or to the cloud, users of director can then create subclips and then of course markers logging that content that's coming in. Now those logs, with markers and specific subclips with highlights and things like that, editors within, then say Adobe Premiere or Final Cut can then pick up that those markers and so on, see the live stream, because the codec that is produced in this case is actually a growing file. So it actually opens up within Adobe Premiere, and you can hit refresh to see more frames that have been written, and then be able to see then the subclips that were created, of course also the markers as well, through the eMAM panel, all in real time within Adobe Premiere. And so this gives you the ability to log it. Maybe one person's logging and then another person's editing. And of course, those people can be local or also remote with some kind of remote connection to the eMAM system as well. So kind of how this looks with eMAM, you have an option. So there's typically the eMAM system, work group, or enterprise that you have, and then you can add the option for live, eMAM live. And then you also need, in this case, as we talked about, recording hardware. So those would be encoders, and we'll talk about some options there. With those encoders, typically they'll take on multiple camera feeds. You could have just one line cut that's coming in, or you could have multiple camera feeds that are coming into the encoders and then go through Drastic and then of course into the eMAM system, where maybe somebody's doing a multicam edit there as well as it's coming in live. Typically the encoders will produce a high quality master file, and on local premise, you know, that is a high bandwidth codec that's being used, but it's in the cloud, it's maybe a little bit less, because if it is streamed to the cloud, it's a little bit harder to push a very high quality content up to the cloud. You could record locally and then upload that file later to eMAM, but you know, there's a lot of options there as well. Access to the high-res media, so everything that you log is linking back to the high-res media. So as you're watching the preview, that R10 preview, you're actually linking and logging with timecode back to the original content. So when you do the edits, it's not off proxy, but it's off the original content or a high-res content. Again, we can tag the media, editors can pick up. Because this file that's being produced is a growing file, then you start to see the frames as they come in, and it grows with it. And you can actually do catch-up edits and logging as well. So if you miss something, you can actually go back and add a cut and then jump right back to live as well. So, and the really nice thing about all this is if you're using, say, cloud or remote editors or loggers, they could actually package up content while it's still live and then deliver content. So if you're doing highlights and things, sporting events and so on, different periods or quarters and so on, you could actually do highlights from that first period or quarter and then be able to then upload those to, say, social media as well. So now some of the encoders that we've used in the past with some clients, Bluefish, Blackmagic, AJA, and then of course Telestream with Lightspeed, and then they have Wirecast as well, different options there. So different types of encoders will typically produce for us a file that's readable for Drastic to pick up and then create that R10, an H.264 proxy, and then it uses the time code that's provided by the encoder. So if you have time code coming in, it produces a master clip, and then we take that master clip through NetX Code Server and then create the R10 file and a proxy file, which will be used after the recording is completed. Then users would preview that proxy file there as well. But it also produces that master quality product that we're going to be editing from and then delivering and transcoding from. You know, if you create highlight reels and things like that, we'd be transcoding from that master clip there as well. So again, it's a growing file, and that's how we can edit that content as it's coming in into the system. So in a lot of cases, how do you trigger then that live recording? So depending on the encoder that you use, this is actually Drastic Technologies encoders, or not encoders, but software to actually trigger the encoders to start recording. And then of course, their software has monitoring capabilities. Telestream has monitoring capabilities as well with their applications. So it just depends on which encoder you use that's taking in the stream, or not the stream, but the video that's coming in, and then producing the master file that we're going to then transcode into the R10 and proxy, and of course master clip as well. So the idea really here is, you know, trigger this through this event. There's also various other ways we can do this through the API, through eMAM and so on to trigger there. But in most cases, users will just go ahead and use the triggering, capturing, and then monitoring software that comes with the encoder in their system. So this is kind of how it looks within eMAM. This is our eMAM Director software, web-based interface. The videos do come in and they'll be tagged live, so that you'll see the live recording on there. You also have the ability, as I mentioned, to jump back in time. So if you need to rewind a little bit, we support JKL capabilities to rewind and then do a marker or subclip and start logging back, and then jump right to live as well. You can jump between different feeds. So I could be watching one feed, add some markers, save those markers, and then jump to another feed and then do those. You can only preview one at a time, but and do logging. But the idea is that you'll go into the browser widget and then select the one you're going to preview, and then do your logging, and then jump to another one if you need to. there as well. So now, how we use Drastic Technologies, we also use their player. So not only do we use their transcoder to create the R10 file for us to preview within eMAM, H.264 for something that's used after the fact that the recording has stopped. But in this case here, what we do is we embed their player to preview the R10 file. And that's what users see and can see then the time code and then the video that's coming in and then be able to do the logging. So what we do is we embed their player inside. We see the R10 file coming in. The users select it and then they start doing their logging. And then of course, other situations where they can actually bring that also into Adobe Premiere and things like that. But within the director interface, we use the NetX player to be able to preview that content coming in. Okay, so on the logging side, this is watching a video. It's through the director interface, which is web-based. Again, these could be users that are local to where the recording is and the high-res media is, or it could be in the cloud. And a lot of our clients are looking at the cloud side where a stream comes in, remote editor logs in, or just a logger logs into the director interface. They open up our widgets called markers and subclips in preview, and they select the video. They start previewing it, and then start adding the markers, adding the subclips, and so on. And as they do that, then it starts stacking up. The video is actually tagged now with those markers and subclips and with any information that they've added to, say, descriptions and things like that. Those then also become available for Adobe Premiere to be able to preview, or you can actually use the rough cut editor that we have built into the eMAM system. Now, this is kind of unique where I could actually take the feed coming in, create some subclips, drop those subclips down onto a timeline, which is a single track. It's very basic, rough cut edits and so on. And then I could actually stitch this together and then deliver it to social media while the recording is happening. So it could be a live event. I'm watching it. I find some highlights, select the cuts that I want, drop them onto the timeline. Maybe you put a header and a footer at the end with some promos or logos or graphics and so on. And then I stitch it together, save it and then stitch it together. Or you could take this sequence and then drop it into Adobe Premiere and then have an editor do its finish for that as well. So once you develop those highlights and things, then we can actually then deliver that content directly to, say, social media or web page or VOD sites and things like that. We have delivery options of just taking maybe a subclip for delivery or that timeline I just showed you as well to deliver up to the different sites and so on. Now, if you're looking at doing live streaming to the cloud, so you would have an encoder locally, and those local encoders then produce like a transport stream, SRT, RTP, and so on. These different types of streams then land somewhere within the cloud. So a location that's that you can do a live stream from. That live stream could be viewed then, on different sites and so on as it's being recorded. But what we do is we put a Drastic NetX code server instead of local. We put that in the cloud. And in the cloud, then it converts it to that R10 that we can preview within the director interface. And then we can start doing the logging and so on. So the eMAM system would actually be in the cloud. Okay, so everything's there. The NetX code server, and then you have high-speed storage, cloud storage that's in, say, S3, for example, in AWS. And so with that, the stream comes in from your encoder that's at the event. And it produces that transport stream, lands on this storage that we have, that then the NetX code server is going to decode that stream and then produce that R10 and H.264 for us. Now that's the file then that we start using and connecting with within the eMAM system, and then a remote person who's doing the logging would then see that coming into the director interface, and they would preview the R10 file first, do all the logging or editing and so on. But then that master clip that's being produced, and again, as I mentioned on streaming to the cloud, it's not going to be as robust as maybe a local encoder with the high-res content. It's going to be somewhere in the middle. That's also going to land up on that storage. So any logging that somebody does remotely then would produce off that master clip that NetX code is producing for us as well. So the R10 and the H.264 files that are being previewed, those are only for preview and proxy, but the NetX code server is also producing then some kind of mid-level codec for us. It's not going to be high res, totally at the high end like a local encoder would be, but it's very close to and so on. So again, the stream comes in, lands, we decode it, produce some kind of mid-level codec, and then the R10 is used for remote folks to log into the AWS system through eMAM, and then be able to do the logging and so on that. Okay, so I think we're going to wrap it up on that. And again, if you have any questions, or you can actually check us out on emamsolutions.com or emamcloud.com and take a look at some of the other options that we have for that, or just let us know if you have any questions and we can get back with you on that as well. All right, thank you, and I appreciate you logging in today, and have a good day. Thanks.
Learn more at emamcloud.com and emamsolutions.com.